Your grandmother's kitchen smelled like oatmeal, steel cut, not instant. She'd stir it slowly on weekend mornings, never checking a recipe, never measuring anything twice. She'd tell you it was good for your heart, that it would keep you strong. She didn't have a study to cite, just 60 years of watching what worked. Turns out she was right, and now we know exactly why. In February 2026, researchers at the University of Bonn published something remarkable. Not a new drug, not a complicated intervention, just oatmeal. 2 days of eating oatmeal, that's it, and LDL cholesterol dropped by 10%, the kind of drop that normally takes weeks of medication to achieve. And here's what surprised even the researchers: the benefits lasted. 6 weeks after the participants stopped eating oatmeal, their cholesterol was still lower. Let's back up for a second, because if you're like most people, you've heard that oatmeal is good for your heart. It's on every list of heart-healthy foods. But the advice usually sounds something like, eat oatmeal regularly, over time as part of a balanced diet, slow and steady. This study did something different. They asked, what happens if we concentrate the intervention? What if we make oatmeal the main event, just for 48 hours? The study, published in Nature Communications, recruited 32 people with metabolic syndrome. That's a cluster of conditions that often travel together. Excess body weight, high blood pressure, elevated blood sugar, abnormal blood lipids. Having 3 or more of these puts you in the metabolic syndrome category. And roughly 1/3 of American adults have it. That's over 100 million people walking around with elevated cardiovascular risk, often without knowing it. The intervention was simple but specific. Participants ate 300 grams of oatmeal per day. That works out to about 1 cup of dry oats per meal, 3 times daily. The oats were boiled, no fancy preparation, with only small additions of fruit or vegetables. And here's the key: this cut their usual calorie intake roughly in half. So we need to acknowledge something up front. This wasn't just about oatmeal. The calorie restriction likely contributed to the benefits too. The researchers are honest about that. But here's what makes this study different from a simple diet trial. They tracked what happened inside the participants' guts, and that's where the real story emerges. When you eat oatmeal, the fiber, specifically beta-glucan, travels to your large intestine mostly intact. Your stomach and small intestine can't break it down. But your gut bacteria, they feast on it. And what they produce is they break down those oat fibers. That's where the cholesterol magic happens. Lead researcher Linda Klumpen describes it this way: the oatmeal increased the number of certain bacteria in the gut. These bacteria produce phenolic compounds as they break down the oats. One compound in particular stood out: ferulic acid. And ferulic acid, it turns out, has a measurable effect on how your body handles cholesterol. So the pathway works like this. You eat oats. Your gut bacteria break them down. They release ferulic acid, and ferulic acid tells your liver to do something different with cholesterol. And the results? After just 2 days, LDL cholesterol, that's the type most associated with cardiovascular risk, dropped by 10% across the group. To put that in perspective, a 10% reduction in LDL is clinically meaningful. It's the kind of change that shifts your long-term cardiovascular risk profile. But the most surprising finding came weeks later, 6 weeks after the intervention ended, with participants back to their normal diets. The cholesterol benefits were still there. The gut bacteria changes persisted. The metabolic shifts persisted. 2 days of oatmeal had essentially reprogrammed something in their digestive systems. Now, I want to be careful here. This was a small study, 32 participants. That's enough to suggest something real is happening, but it's not definitive proof. The study focused specifically on people with metabolic syndrome. Whether the same effects would happen in healthy individuals or in people already taking statins, we don't know yet. And we can't fully separate oatmeal's effect from the calorie restriction. Cutting your calories in half for 2 days does things to your metabolism all on its own. What the researchers did establish, and this is important, is the mechanism. They didn't just observe that cholesterol dropped. They traced the pathway through gut bacteria to ferulic acid to liver function. Understanding the mechanism matters because it tells us this isn't a fluke. When you know why something works, you can predict when it will work and when it won't. There's something else worth noting. This oatmeal approach isn't actually new. It has roots in traditional German medicine, something called the Haferkur or oat cure. For decades, German physicians have used short-term oat-only diets for metabolic conditions, traditional knowledge that modern science is now catching up to. The study also found additional benefits beyond cholesterol. Participants experienced modest weight loss and lower blood pressure, likely connected to the calorie reduction. But the cholesterol changes specifically correlated with the gut bacteria changes. The more certain bacteria increased, the more cholesterol dropped. A direct dose-response relationship. So what does this mean for you? If you have metabolic syndrome or elevated cholesterol, this study suggests a 2-day oatmeal reset might be worth considering. But, and this is important, talk to your doctor first, especially if you're already on cholesterol medication. Any significant dietary change can interact with how medications work. Your healthcare provider can help you navigate that. If you do want to try it, here's what the study protocol looked like. 300 grams of oatmeal daily. That's roughly 1 cup of dry oats per meal, cooked simply in water. Small additions only. A handful of berries, some chopped vegetables. Nothing that would significantly change the calorie equation. And remember, this cut participants' normal intake roughly in half. 2 days only. This isn't meant to be a long-term diet. It's a short intervention. Think of it like a reset button for your gut bacteria. Extending it without medical guidance could mean inadequate nutrition. And here's something the supplement industry won't tell you. You can't just take ferulic acid as a pill and get the same effect. The researchers specifically note that it's the gut bacteria processing that matters. When you take ferulic acid directly, it gets absorbed before reaching your large intestine. Your gut bacteria never get involved, and without the bacterial processing, you don't get the sustained metabolic changes. The bacteria need the whole oat fiber to work with. They produce ferulic acid right there in your gut, where it can interact with your cells directly. That's the key. This is why food studies are so complicated. It's rarely about single nutrients. It's about how your body and the trillions of bacteria living in it process the whole food. The researchers found that certain bacterial strains increase significantly after the oatmeal intervention. These weren't random bacteria. They're specifically adapted to break down the types of fiber found in oats. For long-term cholesterol management, the implication is interesting. You don't necessarily need to do the intensive 2-day protocol repeatedly. Regular oatmeal consumption, not exclusive, just regular, may support these beneficial bacteria. Think of it less as a quick fix and more as feeding your gut bacteria what they need to do their job. Consistency probably matters more than intensity for ongoing maintenance. If you decide to try the 2-day reset, consider tracking your own numbers. Get a baseline cholesterol test before, then test again a few weeks after. See how your specific body responds. The average result in the study was 10%. But everyone's body is different. Your response might be stronger, weaker, or somewhere in between. Track your personal data. One more thing worth mentioning. This study joins a growing body of research suggesting that our grandparents' food wisdom wasn't wrong. It was just waiting for the science to catch up. Fermented foods, whole grains, traditional broths. Many of these foods have specific effects on gut bacteria that we're only now beginning to understand at a molecular level. The human gut microbiome evolved alongside these traditional diets for thousands of years. Our bacteria know what to do with oats. They've had plenty of practice. And if this kind of evidence-based health information interests you, subscribe. We cover research like this every week, always focused on what the science actually says versus what marketing claims. Because here's the truth about nutrition science. The answers are usually simpler than the supplement industry wants you to believe. Sometimes it's just oatmeal. Your grandmother didn't need to understand phenolic compounds or bacterial metabolites. She just knew that oatmeal made people feel better. She'd seen it work year after year. Now a team in Bonn has traced the exact pathway, from fiber to bacteria to ferulic acid to lower cholesterol. The mechanism your grandmother intuited, written out in molecular detail. 2 days of oatmeal, a 10% drop in LDL, benefits that lasted 6 weeks. Sometimes the most powerful interventions are the simplest ones. This content is for informational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your doctor before making changes to your health routine. Thanks for listening.